The bridal suite smelled of gardenias and expensive perfume, a scent that would forever remind me of this moment. I stood before the full-length mirror, alone, watching my reflection adjust the veil for the third time. My wedding dress was a dream I had saved 2 years to afford. Ivory silk that caught the afternoon light streaming through the stained glass windows, French lace sleeves that my grandmother would have loved if she were still alive to see this day. Through the heavy carved door, I could hear the gentle chaos of a wedding about to begin. The string quartet tuning their instruments, guests chatting as they found their seats, the florist making last-minute adjustments to the arrangements lining the aisle. Everything was perfect. Everything except the conspicuous absence of the 3 people who should have been here an hour ago. My phone buzzed on the antique vanity table. Mother's name lit up the screen, and for one desperate, foolish moment, hope bloomed in my chest like those gardenias. Maybe they were just running late. Maybe there had been traffic on the highway from Boston. Maybe Preston's car had a flat tire and they were waiting for roadside assistance. I swiped to answer, pressing the phone to my ear with hands that had started to shake. Mother's voice came through immediately, clipped and efficient, the tone she used when discussing household staff or charity committee obligations. Never the warm voice she reserved for Preston. "Aria, sweetheart, I am terribly sorry, but there has been a change of plans. Preston called about 30 minutes ago. There is an emergency with one of his business deals, absolutely critical, and he needs your father and me in Manhattan right away. We are already on the road. You know how these things are, darling. Business cannot wait." The words came at me too fast, a rehearsed speech delivered without pause for response. My mouth opened, but no sound emerged. My carefully applied makeup suddenly felt like a mask that was cracking, piece by piece. In the background, I heard my father's voice, impatient and commanding as always. "Eleanor, for God's sake, just tell her and hang up. We are going to hit traffic." My mother had not even argued with him, had not even tried. Her voice returned, slightly muffled as if she had turned away from the phone. "Yes, Arthur, just one moment." Then back to me, already moving on, already past this inconvenient interruption to their day. "Preston's investor is only in town until this evening, you understand. This deal could save his company. Your father is confirming our dinner reservation at Per Se right now. It is impossible to get a table there, you know." But Arthur pulled some strings. My vision began to tunnel. The ornate bridal suite, with its cream-colored walls and Baroque furniture, started to blur at the edges. This was my wedding day. My wedding day. And they were discussing restaurant reservations in Manhattan. But Mother, this is my wedding. Oh, darling, you will be fine. You have always been so independent, so capable. You do not need us there to have a beautiful ceremony. Liam's family is lovely. They will more than make up for our absence. Besides, you understand how important Preston's career is. He is going to take over Vance Industries someday. This is his future we are talking about. His future. Always his future. Never mine. We will make it up to you," she continued, her tone brightening with false cheer. "We will take you and Liam out for a lovely dinner next month. Somewhere wonderful. You can wear your dress again, and we will take photos. It will be like we were there. You know we love you, sweetheart." Before I could respond, before I could scream or cry or beg, the line went dead. She had hung up. My mother had called to tell me she was missing my wedding, and then hung up before I could even process what she had said. I stood frozen, phone still pressed against my ear, staring at my reflection without really seeing it. The beautiful bride in the mirror looked like a stranger. A fool. A woman who had somehow convinced herself that today would be different, that this milestone would finally be important enough for them to show up. Behind me, the door swung open. I saw Liam's reflection appear in the mirror before I turned around. He had been checking with the officiant about timing, making sure everything was running on schedule. His face was bright with joy and anticipation, that gorgeous smile that had made me fall in love with him 3 years ago. But the moment his eyes found mine, the moment he registered my expression, his smile faltered and died. What happened? He crossed the room in 3 long strides, his hands reaching for mine. The phone slipped from my numb fingers and he caught it, setting it carefully on the vanity before taking both my hands in his warm, steady grip. "Aria, talk to me. What is wrong? What happened?" His voice was low, controlled, but I could see the anger building in his eyes as I told him. His jaw tightened, and for a moment I thought he might put his fist through the wall. Instead, he took both my hands in his grip steady and warm. Listen to me. I will walk with you. We do not need them. We have never needed them. Something in his words, in the fierce certainty of his voice, cut through my paralysis. I took a deep breath, then another. I nodded. When the doors opened and the wedding march began, I did not walk alone down that aisle. I took Liam's arm, and together we walked past the shocked faces and whispered conversations of 300 guests who had noticed the conspicuous empty seats in the front row where my family should have been sitting. Later, people would tell me how brave I looked, how radiant. They did not know that with every step, I was remembering. I was remembering my 16th birthday, when Preston had been given a brand new BMW with a giant red bow on the hood. I had watched from my bedroom window as he whooped and jumped into the driver's seat, as mother and father beamed with pride. My own present had been waiting on my desk. A $50 bookstore gift card, with a note in father's handwriting that read, "Invest in knowledge." That was the same year Preston had crashed his previous car, the third one, while driving drunk. Father had made a single phone call, and the charges had disappeared. I remembered my high school graduation. I had been valedictorian, earned a full scholarship to Columbia, spent weeks writing my speech. When I looked out from the podium at the assembled families, searching for familiar faces, I found only empty chairs. Later, I learned they had been at Preston's polo match 3 hours away. When I called father that night, voice shaking with hurt I could not quite hide, he had sighed like I was being unreasonable. "Arya, you must understand. Preston is the future of the Vance legacy. His connections matter. You have always been self-sufficient. You do not need us there to succeed." That had been the pattern my entire life. Preston's needs, Preston's dreams, Preston's mistakes that required covering up. And me, always in the background, always told that I was strong enough to manage alone, that I should be proud of how independent I was. Independence, I had learned, was just another word for neglect. After the wedding, after the reception where Liam's family and our friends surrounded us with genuine love and celebration, I made a decision. I would build something. Not for approval, not for recognition from people who would never see me. I would build something for myself. The first year was brutal. I worked from a cramped studio apartment in Brooklyn, surviving on coffee and 4 hours of sleep. I had an idea for a creative consulting agency that would help small businesses develop authentic brand identities. Aura Creative, I called it. The name felt right, something that captured the essence of what I wanted to create. But ideas meant nothing without capital, and capital meant pitching to investors who looked at my age, my lack of corporate experience, my gender, and found reasons to say no. I heard every excuse. Too risky, too saturated a market, come back when you have more experience. One venture capitalist actually told me I should find a male co-founder to add credibility. I smiled politely, thanked him for his time, and left before I said something I would regret. Rejection after rejection piled up. My savings dwindled. There were nights when I sat at my desk, surrounded by spreadsheets and business plans, wondering if everyone had been right. Maybe I was not cut out for this. Maybe I should have taken that corporate job, climbed someone else's ladder, played it safe. Then I met Isabella Rossi. She was a self-made investor, a woman who had built her fortune from nothing and had a reputation for backing unconventional ventures. I almost did not go to the pitch meeting. I was tired, discouraged, running on fumes. But Liam had looked at me that morning and said, "One more time. Just one more." Isabella's office was not what I expected. No marble floors or mahogany desks. It was practical, efficient, lined with books and whiteboards covered in notes. She listened to my entire presentation without interrupting, her dark eyes sharp and assessing. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and studied me for a long moment. "I do not invest in ideas," she said finally. "The market is full of ideas. I invest in warriors. People who will fight when things get hard, who will adapt when plans fall apart, who will not quit when everyone tells them to." Her gaze pinned me in place. "You are a warrior, Arya Valenti. I can see it. The question is, can you?" She invested $200,000, enough to get started, to hire a small team, to prove the concept. I worked like I had never worked before. 18-hour days, learning everything on the fly, making mistakes and fixing them, slowly building a client base. The first year we broke even. The second year we turned a profit. By the third year, Aura Creative had expanded to offices in 3 cities, with a roster of impressive clients and a reputation for innovative, authentic branding. I appeared in business magazines. Forbes did a feature on up-and-coming women entrepreneurs. I spoke at conferences, mentored young women starting their own businesses, and through it all, I heard nothing from my family. No congratulations, no acknowledgement, radio silence. I told myself I did not care. I had built this without them. I would continue without them. But late at night, when I allowed myself to feel it, there was still that small, stubborn part of me that wondered if they noticed, if they were proud, if maybe now I had finally done enough to matter. Then, 5 years after my wedding, my phone rang. Father. His voice had that same authoritative tone I remembered from childhood, the one that expected obedience without question. Arya, you will come home this weekend. The family needs to meet. I have already booked your flight. Not a request, a command. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Come home for what, Father? There was a pause, the kind that told me he was not used to being questioned. We will discuss it when you arrive. This is not a negotiation. I looked at my calendar, at the investor meetings I had scheduled, the team presentations, the life I had built. I thought about the girl I had been, always hoping, always waiting to be seen. That girl would have canceled everything and gotten on that plane. But I was not that girl anymore. I will drive, I said quietly. I will be there Saturday evening. I hung up before he could respond. Liam, who had been working at the kitchen table, looked up with concern. You do not have to go. Yes, I do. But I am going on my terms. Saturday evening, I drove my new Ferrari up the long driveway to the Vance estate. I had bought the car 3 months earlier, after Aura Creative had been acquired by a major tech conglomerate for $50 million. $50 million. The number still felt unreal. I had taken the acquisition deal not because I needed the money, though financial security was nice, but because it gave me something else. It gave me options, freedom, power. I parked the Ferrari right in front of the house, deliberately conspicuous against the old-world elegance of the estate. The same maid who had worked there since I was a child opened the door, and her eyes widened when she saw me. Miss Arya, she whispered. You look wonderful. I smiled at her, genuinely. Thank you, Maria. How have you been? She glanced nervously toward the drawing room. They are waiting for you. The room had not changed. Same antique furniture, same oil paintings of stern ancestors, same oppressive feeling of old money and older expectations. Father sat in his usual chair, Mother beside him on the sofa. Preston occupied the other chair, his wife perched on the arm, and I noticed immediately how different he looked. Older, worn, with the slightly desperate look of someone who had been skating on thin ice for too long. Arya, Father, began without preamble. Thank you for coming. We have a situation that requires immediate attention. I remained standing, keeping my coat on, my posture deliberately casual. What situation? Preston's company is experiencing temporary financial difficulties, Mother interjected smoothly, as if she were discussing the weather. Nothing serious, but it requires a short-term influx of capital to stabilize operations. I looked at Preston. How much? He met my eyes with that same entitled expression he had worn our entire lives, the one that said the world owed him everything. 2 million, maybe 2.5 to be safe. It is just a cash flow issue. With your recent windfall, that amount would barely make a dent. Something ugly flickered in his tone when he said windfall, like my success was just luck, just coincidence, not the result of years of work. I kept my voice level. What kind of cash flow issue? The silence stretched. Finally, Father spoke, and I heard the edge in his voice that meant he was losing patience. Preston made some unfortunate investment decisions. There were complications. The details are not important. What matters is that this family takes care of its own. Surely you understand that obligation. I understand obligation very well, I said quietly. I spent my entire childhood understanding it. So, explain to me exactly what happened. They tried to deflect, to smooth it over with vague business terminology, but I had spent 5 years learning to read financial statements, to spot the gaps in people's stories. I pressed, and piece by piece, the truth emerged. Preston had not just made bad investments. He had been embezzling from his own company to fund a lifestyle he could not afford. Expensive cars, a yacht he did not need, gambling debts, mistresses. His board had discovered the irregularities. He was facing criminal charges. "The family name is at stake," Father said, and there it was. The real reason I was here. Not because they cared about Preston's welfare, but because the scandal would embarrass them. Tarnish the precious Vance reputation. $2 million will make this go away, Preston said, leaning forward. "Come on, sis. We are family. You owe us that much." "I owe you?" The words came out soft, almost wondering. "I owe you?" Preston's face darkened. "Do not play dumb. This family gave you everything. A roof over your head, the best schools, connections. You would be nothing without the Vance name." Something snapped. All the years of swallowing hurt, of making excuses for them, of hoping they would change. All of it crystallized into perfect, crystalline clarity. I pulled out my phone, set it on the coffee table. The recording app was still running, the red dot blinking. "This entire conversation, including your threats and your confession to embezzlement, is recorded." Preston lunged out of his chair. "You little bitch!" He actually moved toward me, hands raised, and I saw Mother gasp. But before he could take 2 steps, Liam was there, having followed me in, and waited silently by the door. He positioned himself between Preston and me, his presence immovable. Father had to physically restrain Preston, pulling him back. The room erupted into chaos, shouting, accusations. I waited until the noise died down. "I am not giving you money to cover up crimes," I said, "but I am going to tell you what I did do." I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder, placed it next to the phone. "This is the legal documentation for the Valenti Rossi Scholarship Fund. I established it last month with an initial endowment of $20 million. It will provide full scholarships, including housing and living expenses, to talented young women from difficult backgrounds who want to pursue higher education and entrepreneurship." I watched their faces as they processed this. 20 million, almost half of what I had made. "The fund is structured as an irrevocable trust," I continued. "Neither I nor anyone else can dissolve it or redirect its assets. The money is gone, untouchable. It will help hundreds of young women over the coming decades. Women who were invisible to people like you. Women like I was." "You cannot do this," Mother whispered. Her face had gone pale. "That money should have gone to family." "I did do it," I said, 6 weeks ago, and I named it after the 2 most important families in my life. Valenti for Liam, the man who has stood by me when my own blood refused to show up to my wedding. And Rossi for Isabella, the woman who saw potential in me when everyone else saw nothing worth their time. The silence that followed was profound. I could see Father calculating, trying to find an angle, a way to fix this. Preston looked gutted, his last hope of rescue evaporating. Mother's hands shook as she clasped them together. "I am leaving now," I said, picking up my phone. "I suggest Preston finds a good criminal defense attorney. As for the 3 of you, do not contact me again, unless you are prepared to apologize. Genuinely. For how you treated me for 27 years. And even then, I may not answer." I turned and walked out. Behind me, I heard Mother start to cry, heard Father's angry voice demanding I come back, heard Preston cursing. I kept walking. Liam fell into step beside me, his hand finding mine. We got into the Ferrari, and I drove away from that house, away from those people, and I did not look back. The fallout was immediate and ugly. Within a week, my phone was flooded with messages from extended family members, from social acquaintances, from people I had not heard from in years. The Vance family had hired a PR firm, and they were telling their version of the story. Poor Preston, brilliant entrepreneur facing difficult times. Heartless Aria, who had abandoned her family in their hour of need despite her massive fortune. The tabloids loved it. I saw headlines about ungrateful daughters, about the dark side of success, about how money changed people. My mother and Preston's wife posted carefully curated photos on social media of Preston's young daughters, with captions like, "The girls always ask about their Aunt Aria." We tell them she is very busy. The implication was clear. I was the villain, the successful career woman who had turned her back on innocent children. For the first time in my life, I was in the spotlight, and it was brutal. Reporters camped outside my office. Old classmates sold fake stories to gossip magazines. I received hate mail, threats, people telling me I should be ashamed. The board of the tech company that had acquired Aura Creative called an emergency meeting to discuss the reputational risk. I will not lie. There were moments when I wavered, when the sheer weight of public opinion made me question my choices. Maybe I should have just given them the money. Maybe I should have done what they wanted, kept the peace, maintained the facade. But I had allies, real ones. Liam worked overtime, sending cease and desist letters to publications that printed verifiable lies, threatening defamation suits. My former team at Aura Creative, the people who had worked alongside me for years, launched a social media campaign. They shared stories of my mentorship, my integrity, the countless times I had gone out of my way to help employees through personal crises. They used the hashtag #WeStandWithAria, and it gained traction. And then Isabella gave an interview. She chose the Wall Street Journal, a publication known for serious journalism, not gossip. The article was titled, "Women Who Build and Those Who Tear Down." In it, she spoke eloquently about the difference between investing in the future and enabling destructive behavior. She did not mention the Vances by name. She did not need to. Everyone knew exactly what she meant. The tide began to turn when a real investigative journalist got involved. Not a tabloid writer looking for scandal, but someone interested in facts. They started digging into Preston's company, into his history, and what they found was damning. Years of lawsuits from former business partners, complaints from employees, financial records that showed a pattern of fraud and mismanagement. They found people willing to speak on record about how Preston had cheated them, how Arthur and Eleanor had used their influence to smooth over his mistakes time and time again. The journalist also spoke to people who had known me. My college professors, who remembered a driven student who worked 3 jobs to pay for expenses the scholarship did not cover. Maria, the family maid, who spoke carefully but pointedly about how differently the 2 Vance children had been treated, former colleagues who had nothing but praise for my work ethic and character. When the article published, the backlash against the Vances was swift and merciless. The same social circles that had whispered about me now cut them cold. Preston was formally charged. The family estate, mortgaged multiple times to cover his debts, went into foreclosure. Arthur was forced to resign from several boards. The Vance name, which they had valued above everything, became synonymous with hypocrisy and privilege. I watched it unfold with strange detachment. I did not feel the satisfaction I thought I might. Mostly, I felt tired and sad. Sad for the family we could have been, if they had been capable of seeing me as something other than an afterthought or a bank account. 6 months after that dinner, the Valenti Rossi Scholarship Fund held its inaugural gala. It was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, a glittering event attended by business leaders, activists, philanthropists, and educators. Isabella had helped me plan it, making sure we highlighted not just the money but the mentorship component of the program. Each scholarship recipient would be paired with a successful professional in their field of interest. I stood backstage, listening to the hum of conversation from the ballroom. My dress was midnight blue, elegant and simple. Isabella appeared at my elbow, impeccable in a white suit. Ready? As I will ever be. We walked out together onto the stage. The applause was warm, genuine. I looked out at the sea of faces and saw Liam in the 3rd row, beaming with pride. Saw members of my old Aura Creative team who had flown in from 3 different cities. Saw journalists I respected, investors who had believed in me, mentors who had guided me. I spoke about the purpose of the fund, about creating opportunities for those who had been overlooked, about how talent and drive existed everywhere, but access and support did not, about how one person believing in you could change the trajectory of your entire life. Then it was time to award the first scholarship. The recipient was a 19-year-old named Maya Chen, a first-generation college student studying computer science while working nights at a convenience store to support her disabled mother. When I called her name, she came up on stage with tears streaming down her face. I handed her the certificate, the check that would cover 4 years of tuition, room, board, and expenses, and a letter of acceptance to our mentorship program. She stared at it like she could not quite believe it was real. "Thank you," she whispered. "You do not know what this means." But I did know. I knew exactly what it meant. I pulled her into a hug, and for a moment we just stood there, two women who had been told we did not matter, proving otherwise. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations, of meeting the other scholarship recipients, of watching their families cry with joy and relief. At one point, I stepped out onto the museum's balcony, needing a moment of quiet. The city spread out before me, lights glittering in the darkness. I heard footsteps behind me. Liam joined me at the railing, slipping his arm around my waist. "You did it." "We did it," I corrected. He shook his head. "No, love. This was you. All you." I leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. "Do you think I am a bad person for not helping Preston?" The question had haunted me, despite everything. Despite knowing rationally that I had made the right choice, there was still that voice, the one trained by years of conditioning, that whispered I should have been more forgiving, more generous, more giving. Liam turned me to face him, his hands on my shoulders. "Listen to me. You are not a bad person for having boundaries. You are not a bad person for refusing to enable someone's self-destruction. Your family had countless opportunities to change, to treat you with basic respect and love. They chose not to. That is not your failure. It is theirs." I nodded, blinking back unexpected tears. "I know. I do know that. It just helps to hear it sometimes." He kissed my forehead. "Then I will tell you as many times as you need to hear it." We stood there a while longer, watching the city. I thought about the girl I had been, standing alone in that bridal room, waiting for parents who would never arrive. I thought about all the years of hoping, of trying to be enough, of slowly learning that I was enough, that I had always been enough, just not for them. And I thought about Maya Chen, about the 100 other young women who would receive scholarships in the coming years, about the lives that would change, the dreams that would become possible, the ripple effects that would spread out in ways I could not yet imagine. This was my legacy. Not the money itself, but what it would create. Opportunity. Hope. A louder message than I had ever received that said, "You matter. Your dreams matter. Someone sees you." When we went back inside, Isabella caught my eye from across the room and raised her glass. I raised mine back, a toast to warriors, I thought. To the ones who survive, who rebuild, who choose to create light instead of perpetuating darkness. The gala ended late. As guests filed out, several of them stopped to thank me, to tell me their own stories of overcoming adversity, of family dysfunction, of finding their own paths. I listened to each one, grateful for their trust, for the connections being forged. In the end, only Isabella, Liam, and I remained in the emptying ballroom. We stood together, three people who had found each other despite the odds, who had built something real from the wreckage of what came before. "You know they will try again," Isabella said quietly. "Your family, when the dust settles and they need something else, they will reach out. They will try different tactics. Guilt, manipulation, even attempts at reconciliation." "I know," I said. "And when that happens, I will decide how to respond based on who I am then, not who I was before. But I will never forget what I learned, that my worth is not determined by their approval. That family is not just blood, it is the people who show up, who stay, who fight for you when you cannot fight for yourself." Isabella nodded approvingly. "You have learned well." We said our goodbyes, promising to meet for brunch the following week. Liam and I drove home through the quiet city streets. In our apartment, I kicked off my heels and collapsed onto the couch with a sigh of relief. Liam sat beside me, pulling my feet into his lap to massage them. "So," he said, "how does it feel? To have changed the course of hundreds of lives in one night?" I thought about it. Terrifying, humbling. "Right," he smiled. "That sounds about perfect." I closed my eyes, letting the exhaustion of the evening wash over me. In the darkness behind my eyelids, I saw flashes of memory. The empty seats at my graduation, the lonely wedding, the years of building aura creative in the face of rejection, the dinner at the Vance estate where everything had finally broken open. And I saw the future too. Maya Chen finishing her degree, starting her own company, maybe someday funding her own scholarship program for the next generation. The web of change spreading outward, each woman lifting up the ones behind her. When I opened my eyes, Liam was watching me with that look I had come to treasure, the one that said he saw me, really saw me, and loved what he saw. "I am proud of you," he said simply. "Thank you for walking down that aisle with me. Always. Wherever you go, however far." I smiled, feeling something settle in my chest. Peace, maybe. Or just the absence of that constant, gnawing hope for acceptance from people who would never give it. Either way, it felt like freedom. The next morning, my phone buzzed with messages. News articles about the gala, photos of Maya Chen's tearful acceptance, social media posts praising the scholarship fund, and, buried among them, a message from an unknown number. I opened it cautiously. It was from Preston's wife. The text was short. "I wanted you to know that Preston has agreed to a plea deal. He will serve 18 months. I am filing for divorce. I am sorry for the things I posted on social media. I was scared and angry, and I took it out on you. You did not deserve that. I hope your scholarship fund helps a lot of young women. They are lucky to have someone who cares." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed a simple reply. "Thank you for letting me know. I hope you and the girls are okay. If you ever need anything genuine, you can reach out. I wish you the best." I did not know if she would ever take me up on that offer, but I meant it. I was not interested in punishing her or the children for the sins of others. That was the difference between my family and me. I knew when to hold boundaries and when to extend grace. Over the following months, life settled into a new rhythm. I consulted for the tech company that had bought Aura Creative, worked with the scholarship fund's board to select more recipients, and slowly, carefully, started planning my next venture. This time, I was thinking bigger. A network of co-working spaces and incubators specifically designed for women entrepreneurs from underrepresented backgrounds. Places where they could connect, learn, and access the resources and support that had taken me years to find. Isabella loved the idea. She introduced me to other investors, and within 6 months we had the funding to open the first location in Brooklyn. We called it the Foundry, a place where things were forged, where raw potential was shaped into something strong. I heard nothing from Arthur or Eleanor. No apology, no attempt at reconciliation, just silence. Preston sent a single letter from prison, handwritten, claiming he had hit rock bottom and was working on himself. He said he hoped we could rebuild our relationship, someday. The letter was full of the right words, the language of rehabilitation and remorse, but I detected no real understanding of why his actions had been wrong. It was all about him, his suffering, his redemption arc. Not once did he acknowledge the decades of pain he and our parents had caused me. I wrote back, briefly, "I am glad you are getting help. I hope you find a better path forward. But I am not ready for a relationship, and I may never be. I wish you well from a distance." That felt right. Not cruel, not vindictive, just honest. I had no obligation to provide him with absolution or a second chance at a relationship I had never really had in the first place. A year after the gala, Isabella invited me to lunch at her favorite restaurant in Midtown. When I arrived, she was already there, and sitting with her was a woman I did not recognize. Older, maybe in her 60s, with sharp eyes and an air of authority. "Aria," Isabella said, smiling in that particular way that meant she was up to something, "this is Margaret Thornton. She runs one of the largest women's foundations in the country. I have been telling her about your work." We shook hands, and Margaret got right to the point. "I have been following your scholarship fund and the Foundry with great interest. What you are building is exactly what we need more of. I would like to discuss a potential partnership. My foundation could provide additional funding and resources to help you scale faster, reach more women, create more spaces." We talked for 3 hours. By the end of lunch, we had the outline of an agreement that would double the size of the scholarship fund and allow us to open 5 more Foundry locations within 2 years. I drove home dizzy with possibility, with the reality that this thing I had started was growing beyond anything I had imagined. That night, I sat in my home office, the one I had designed with big windows overlooking the city. Liam was in the next room, on a call with a client. I pulled out my journal, something my therapist had suggested I start keeping. I wrote about the day, about the partnership, about how strange and wonderful it felt to be building something that mattered. Then I wrote something I had never quite articulated before. For so long, I measured my worth by whether the Vances acknowledged me. Every achievement was filtered through the question of whether it would finally make them see me, but somewhere along the way, that changed. I stopped building for them and started building for me, for the women I wanted to help, for the legacy I wanted to leave. And in letting go of the need for their approval, I found something infinitely more valuable. I found myself. The real me, not the version that contorted itself trying to fit into their narrow definition of worthiness. Just me, flawed and fierce and free. I closed the journal and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Maya Chen was in her dorm room, studying for midterms. The other scholarship recipients were pursuing their dreams, working toward futures that had seemed impossible a year ago. The Foundry's first cohort of entrepreneurs were building their businesses, supporting each other, creating the community I had desperately needed at their age. This was what mattered. Not revenge, not forcing my family to acknowledge their mistakes, not winning some imaginary competition. Just this. Creating something good, something lasting, something that made the world a little bit better for people who needed it. Liam appeared in the doorway, 2 mugs of tea in hand. He set one on my desk and kissed the top of my head. "You look contemplative, just thinking about how far we have come." "We have," he agreed, settling into the chair across from me. "And how far we still have to go." I smiled at him. This man who had stood by me through everything, who had never once made me feel like I was too much or not enough, who loved me without conditions or caveats. "You know I could not have done any of this without you." He shook his head. "You absolutely could have, but I am glad you did not have to." We sat in comfortable silence, drinking our tea, watching the night. I thought about the girl in the wedding dress, the one who had answered that phone call with hope in her heart, only to have it shattered. I wished I could go back and tell her what I knew now, that the shattering was the beginning, not the end. That sometimes you have to break completely before you can rebuild yourself into something stronger, truer, more authentically you. But I could not go back. None of us can. All we can do is move forward, carrying our scars and our lessons, using what broke us to help others who are breaking. And that was exactly what I planned to do. For the rest of my life, however long that was, I would keep building, keep creating opportunities, keep fighting for the invisible ones, the overlooked ones, the ones told they do not matter. Because they do matter. Every single one of them matters, just like I do, just like I always did, even when the people who were supposed to love me could not see it. 2 years passed. The Foundry expanded to 7 cities. The scholarship fund supported over 200 young women. I appeared on magazine covers, gave keynote speeches, and sat on panels about women's empowerment and entrepreneurship. People called me a role model, an inspiration, a self-made success story. Sometimes I still felt like an imposter, like the scared girl in the wedding dress was the real me, and this confident woman I had become was just an elaborate costume. My therapist assured me this was normal, that it took time for our internal narrative to catch up with our external reality. I was working on it. What helped most was the direct impact I could see. Every time I met a scholarship recipient, heard their story, watched them blossom with opportunity and support, something in me healed a little more. I was giving them what I had needed, what I had eventually found, but much earlier in their journeys. That mattered more than any headline or award. One afternoon in late spring, I was at the Foundry's Manhattan location, meeting with a group of entrepreneurs who were preparing to launch their startups. We were in the middle of a discussion about pricing strategy when my assistant knocked on the conference room door. She looked uncomfortable. "Arya, I am sorry to interrupt. There is someone here to see you. She says it is urgent." "Who?" "Eleanor Vance, your mother." The room went silent. My team knew my history. At least the broad strokes. They had lived through the media circus 2 years earlier. I saw concern and protectiveness flash across their faces. I took a breath. "Tell her I will be out in 10 minutes. Then I turned back to the group. "Let us finish this pricing discussion. Your product is too valuable to undersell. We wrapped up the meeting, but I barely heard the last few minutes of conversation. My mind was racing. Why was she here? What could she possibly want? Part of me wanted to refuse to see her, to have security escort her out. But another part, the part that still carried that small, stubborn hope, needed to know. When I walked into the lobby, Eleanor was standing by the windows, looking out at the city. She had aged. Her hair was more silver than blonde now, and she carried herself with less of that imperious confidence I remembered. She was wearing an expensive coat, but I noticed the handbag was several seasons old, the shoes slightly worn. The Vance fortune was truly gone. She turned when she heard my footsteps. For a moment, we just looked at each other. I kept my expression neutral, professional. This was my space, my territory. I had the power here. Arya. Her voice was softer than I remembered. Thank you for seeing me. I did not invite you, but you are here. What do you want? She flinched slightly at my directness. May we speak somewhere private? I considered refusing, but curiosity won. I led her to a small conference room, closed the door, but did not sit. I stood with my arms crossed, waiting. Eleanor sat down slowly, clutching her purse. She looked smaller, somehow, diminished. I wanted to tell you that Arthur passed away 3 weeks ago. It was his heart. Quick, at least. I felt a strange numbness. My father was dead. I waited for grief, for something, but all I felt was a distant sadness for what had never been. I am sorry for your loss. She nodded, tears filling her eyes. The funeral was small, just close family. I did not inform you because I assumed you would not want to come. You assumed correctly. She absorbed that, then took a shaky breath. Arya, I know I have no right to ask anything of you. I know what we did, how we treated you. I have had 2 years to think about it, to really think about it, not just make excuses. And I kept my voice flat, giving her nothing. And you were right. About everything, we favored Preston his entire life. We took you for granted. We treated you as if your accomplishments meant nothing because they did not fit into our narrow vision of what mattered. She looked down at her hands. After everything came out, after the scandal, I lost friends I had known for 30 years. At first I was angry. I thought they were being disloyal, that they should have stood by us. But then I realized they were not standing by us because we did not deserve it. Because we had built our entire life on appearances and privilege and looking down on anyone who did not fit our world. I said nothing. She continued, her voice breaking. Preston is still in prison. He will be out in 4 months. His daughters barely remember him. His ex-wife remarried, moved to California. She does not let us see the girls anymore. I do not blame her. What would we teach them? How to be entitled, how to destroy everything good through selfishness. Eleanor looked up at me, and I saw genuine anguish in her eyes. I lost you years before that dinner. I lost you every time I missed an event that mattered to you. Every time I chose Preston's needs over yours. Every time I told you that you were strong enough to handle being ignored. I told myself I was teaching you independence, but I was really just excusing my own failure as a mother. The words hung in the air between us. Part of me wanted to accept them, to let this be the reconciliation I had once desperately wanted, but I had learned to listen to my instincts, and something felt incomplete. Why are you here, Mother? Why now? She wiped her eyes. Because Arthur's death made me realize I am running out of time to make amends. And because I wanted you to know that I see what you have built. This place, the scholarship fund, the lives you are changing. I see it, and I am proud of you. I should have said that 20 years ago. I should have said it every day of your life. But I am saying it now, even though I know it may be too late. I walked to the window, looked out at the street below, watched people hurrying past, living their lives, carrying their own complicated histories. When I spoke, my voice was steady. Thank you for telling me about Father. And thank you for the apology. I believe you mean it. But meaning it and having earned forgiveness are different things. I know. I turned to face her. You cannot undo 27 years of neglect with one conversation. You cannot erase the damage of always being second, of never being enough, of building my entire sense of self around trying to earn love that should have been freely given. Eleanor nodded, fresh tears streaming down her face. You are right. I know you are right. But, I continued, surprising myself, I am not closing the door completely. If you want to rebuild some kind of relationship, it will be on my terms. It will be slow. It will require you to actually show up, consistently, without expectations. It will mean accepting that I may never trust you the way a daughter should trust her mother. And it will mean respecting my boundaries without guilt trips or manipulation. I would like that, she whispered. Whatever terms you set, I will respect them. We will see. Actions, not words, Mother. That is what matters now. I understand. I opened the conference room door, a clear signal that the meeting was over. Eleanor stood, gathered her things. At the door, she paused. May I hug you? The question was so tentative, so unlike the commanding woman I had grown up with, that I almost said yes. But I was not ready for that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Not today. She nodded, accepting. Then I will hope for someday. She walked toward the exit, then turned back. Your father, at the end, he talked about you. He was on a lot of medication, confused, but he kept saying your name. I think he had regrets too. He was just too proud to ever say it. I processed this information, feeling that same distant sadness. That may be true, but it does not change anything. He had decades to say it when it would have mattered. Eleanor left. I stood in the lobby for a long time afterward, trying to untangle my emotions. My assistant approached carefully. Are you okay? Honestly, I do not know, but I will be. That evening, I told Liam about the visit. We were in our kitchen, preparing dinner together, a ritual we had developed over the years. He listened without interrupting, then pulled me into his arms. How do you feel about giving her a chance? Conflicted, scared, hopeful, angry that I am hopeful. I laughed without humor. I spent years learning not to need their approval, and now she shows up offering a crumb of it, and part of me still wants it. I hate that. That does not make you weak. It makes you human. She is still your mother, no matter what happened. Having complicated feelings about that is normal. But what if she disappoints me again? What if I open up even a little bit, and she falls back into old patterns? Then you will close the door again, and you will survive it. You are not the powerless girl waiting for scraps anymore. You are the woman who gets to decide what you will and will not accept. That is the difference. I leaned into him, drawing strength from his steadiness. You are right. I know you are right. Over the next few months, Eleanor did reach out. Not excessively, not with demands, but with small gestures. A text message asking how I was. A card on my birthday with a handwritten note. An email sharing an article she thought I would find interesting. Nothing dramatic, just consistent, quiet presence. I responded cautiously, brief replies, polite but distant. I was watching, waiting to see if she would sustain this effort or if it would fade like so many of their past promises. 3 months after her visit, she asked if we could have coffee. I agreed, choosing a cafe near my office, giving myself an easy exit if needed. When I arrived, she was already there, and I noticed she had brought something. A photo album. I thought you might want these, she said, sliding it across the table. I was going through old family photos, and I realized you did not have copies of many of them. Your baby pictures, childhood memories, whatever else happened, those years existed. I thought you should have them. I opened the album slowly. There I was, a toddler with wild curls, laughing at something off camera. A kindergarten graduation photo. Me on a swing set, gap-toothed and grinning. Pictures I had never seen, evidence of a time before everything became complicated. There was one photo that stopped me. I was maybe 7 or 8, at what looked like a family picnic. Eleanor was sitting next to me on a blanket, and we were both laughing at something. Her arm was around me, and I was leaning into her, completely trusting, completely loved. I stared at that photo for a long time. I remember that day. Eleanor said softly. We had gone to the park, just the 4 of us. Preston was playing frisbee with Arthur. You had found a ladybug and were so excited to show me. You talked about it for an hour, telling me all the facts you had learned about ladybugs from some nature book. I did not remember this. Or maybe I had buried it, along with all the other moments that hurt too much to recall. Evidence that there had been love once, before it got lost under expectations and disappointments and the slow erosion of connection. Why did it change? I asked, still looking at the photo. What happened between this and everything else? Eleanor was quiet for a long time. Honestly, I do not know if there was one moment. I think it was gradual. Arthur became more focused on legacy, on grooming Preston to take over the business, and I let myself be swept up in that vision. We started attending more social events, cultivating the right connections for Preston's future, and somehow, without meaning to, we created this hierarchy where his potential mattered more than your reality. She traced the edge of the table with one finger. You were always so capable, so independent. It was easy to tell ourselves you did not need us the way he did. But that was just an excuse. Every child needs their parents. We failed you, and no amount of rationalization changes that. I closed the album, but kept my hand on it. What do you want from me, Mother? Forgiveness? Absolution? A relationship? I want a chance to know you. The real you, not the idea of you I carried in my head. And I want you to know that I am trying to be better. Not just for you, but for myself. I joined a grief counseling group after Arthur died, and it has helped me see a lot of things clearly. How much of my identity was tied up in being Mrs. Arthur Vance, how little I developed my own values and beliefs. I am working on that. There was a sincerity in her voice that I had never heard before. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider that maybe, just maybe, people could change. Not completely, not perfectly, but enough. I will keep the album. Thank you for bringing it, and we can continue having these conversations. But I need you to understand that I am not looking for a traditional mother-daughter relationship. That ship sailed a long time ago. What we build now, if we build anything, will be something different. I understand. Whatever you are willing to give, I am grateful for. We talked for another hour, and it was less painful than I expected. She asked about the foundry, actually listened to my answers, asked intelligent follow-up questions. She told me about the volunteer work she had started doing at a women's shelter, how humbling it was, how much she was learning. We did not talk about Preston. As we were leaving, Eleanor hesitated. May I ask one thing? What? Would you ever consider meeting Preston when he gets out? Not for us, but because he claims he wants to make amends too. I know he hurt you terribly, and I am not asking you to forgive him. Just to consider hearing what he has to say. I felt my walls go up immediately. No, not now, maybe not ever. Preston did not just neglect me. He actively treated me with contempt. He threw things, made threats, showed up to that dinner expecting me to bail him out with no shame whatsoever. Maybe he has changed. Maybe prison gave him perspective, but I am not required to provide him with an audience for his redemption arc. Eleanor nodded quickly. Of course, you are right. I should not have asked. I am sorry. We parted ways, and I walked back to my office feeling drained but not destroyed. That felt like progress. That night, I looked through the photo album again, with Liam. We sat on the couch, and I told him about each picture, the few memories I had, the many gaps that existed. When we reached the photo of 7-year-old me with the ladybug, Liam squeezed my hand. You know what strikes me about this picture? What? How purely happy you look, not trying to be anything, not performing, just being. I hope you find your way back to that. I smiled, though it was bittersweet. I think I am getting there, just took a few detours. The really scenic kind, he said, making me laugh. 6 months later, the 10th Foundry location opened in Seattle. We had also expanded the scholarship fund to include not just tuition but also seed funding for young women entrepreneurs. The impact was exponential. Women we had supported were now successful in their fields, and many were giving back, mentoring the next cohort, creating a self-sustaining network of support. At the Seattle opening, I gave a speech about the power of community, about how none of us succeed alone, about the importance of lifting each other up. In the audience, I saw Eleanor sitting in the back row. She had flown across the country to be there, had not asked for special recognition or VIP treatment, just quietly taken a seat and listened. After the event, she approached me carefully. "You were wonderful up there. I am so proud of what you have created. Thank you for coming." "I meant it." She smiled, a tentative thing. "I am trying to show up. Like you said. Actions. Not words. I know. I see it. We were not close, Eleanor and I. We might never be. But we were something. We had coffee every few weeks when we were in the same city. She sent thoughtful gifts to the scholarship recipients. She was learning who I actually was, and I was learning who she was beneath the layers of society expectations and failed parenting. It was not the relationship I had wanted as a child. But it was honest, and that counted for something. Preston got out of prison. He sent me a letter, much longer than the first one, full of apologies and explanations and hopes for reconciliation. I read it once, then filed it away. I was not ready, and I might never be. That was okay. I did not owe him access to my life just because we shared DNA. My life moved forward. The businesses grew. The scholarship fund flourished. Liam and I talked about starting a family, about what it would mean to be parents, about how we would do things differently. We were taking our time, making sure we were ready, but the possibilities shimmered ahead of us like a promise. One evening, almost 3 years after that first confrontation at the Vance estate, I received an unexpected email. It was from Preston's ex-wife, Melissa. She wrote that the girls were now old enough to ask real questions about their father's side of the family, and they had specifically asked about me. She said she had told them the truth, age-appropriately, about the complicated family dynamics. The girls wanted to know if they could meet me sometime, if I was willing. I stared at that email for a long time. These were not the adults who had hurt me. They were children, innocent of their father's mistakes, curious about the aunt they barely knew. Did I owe them anything? Maybe not. But maybe this was a chance to break the cycle in a different way. I responded to Melissa. I would be willing to meet the girls, but only if she was comfortable with it, and only if they understood that I could not promise to be a regular presence in their lives. I had my own boundaries to protect. She wrote back immediately, grateful and understanding. 2 weeks later, I met my nieces for the first time in years at a neutral location, a children's museum. They were 9 and 11 now, poised on the edge of adolescence, curious and a little shy. Melissa stayed close but gave us space to talk. The older one, Charlotte, studied me seriously. "You look like the pictures," she said. "Mom showed us articles about your scholarship fund. You help a lot of people. I try to." The younger one, Sophie, was more direct. "Why do not you talk to Grandma Eleanor much? She says she misses you. It is complicated. Sometimes families have disagreements, and it takes time to work through them, but your grandmother and I are working on it." "Is it because of our dad?" Charlotte asked. "Because of what he did?" I chose my words carefully. "Your dad made some mistakes, and our family had problems that started long before that. But none of that is your fault, and none of it changes that you are my nieces. I wanted you to know that." Sophie considered this. "Can we write to you sometimes, like pen pals? I would like that." We spent the afternoon together, and it was easier than I expected. They were good kids, smart and kind, clearly being raised well by their mother. As I watched them explore the museum exhibits, I thought about cycles and choices. Preston had failed them, and Arthur and Eleanor had failed me, but Melissa was doing right by her daughters. And maybe, in some small way, I could be part of that. Not a replacement parent, not a savior, just an aunt who showed up occasionally and let them know they mattered. When I got home that evening, I told Liam about the visit. He smiled. "Look at you, expanding your chosen family." Chosen family. That phrase resonated, because that was what I had built. Not people connected by blood obligation, but people connected by mutual respect, genuine care, and the decision to show up for each other. Isabella, who had believed in me. My team at Aura Creative and the Foundry, who had stood by me. The scholarship recipients I mentored. Liam, who had never wavered. And now, tentatively, Eleanor and my nieces, not because I had to include them, but because I was choosing to give them a chance. That was the power I had claimed. The power to choose, to set boundaries, to extend grace where I wanted and withhold it where I needed, to build a life that honored who I was, not who others thought I should be. 5 years after that wedding day, when my parents did not show up, I stood in a different church for a different occasion. Isabella's daughter was getting married, and Isabella had asked me to do a reading. As I stood at the pulpit, looking out at the gathered families, I thought about all the ceremonies that mark our lives, the ones that hurt and the ones that heal. After the ceremony, during the reception, Isabella found me at our table. "You look contemplative, just thinking about how much has changed." She raised her glass. "To change. And to the women brave enough to create it." I clinked my glass against hers. "To warriors." We drank, and I looked around at the celebration. At Liam dancing with the bride, making her laugh. At Eleanor, who had been invited and had come, sitting quietly at a table, trying to fit into this world I had built. At the scholarship recipients who had become friends, who were now successful professionals themselves, who were dancing and laughing, and living the lives they had built with the opportunities we had given them. This was my legacy. Not the money, not the businesses, not even the scholarship fund itself, but this. The web of connection, of women lifting each other up, of cycles broken and new patterns established. Every person here represented a choice. A choice to believe in potential, to invest in people rather than pedigree, to measure worth by character rather than convenience. I thought about the girl I had been, standing alone in that bridal room, her world crashing down around her. I wished I could tell her that this moment was coming, that the pain would catalyze transformation, that she would not just survive but thrive in ways she could not yet imagine, that the rejection she feared was actually a gift, forcing her to build a life based on her own values rather than someone else's approval. But I could not tell her. I could only be her future self, living proof that it was possible, and maybe that was enough. Later that night, as Liam and I drove home through the quiet streets, he reached over and took my hand. "Happy?" "Yes. Actually, genuinely happy. Not the pretend kind. Not the hopeful kind. Just happy." He brought my hand to his lips, kissed it. "You deserve it." "We all do," I said. "That is what I have learned. Happiness is not something you have to earn or deserve. It is something you create, something you choose, something you build one decision at a time." "When did you get so wise?" I laughed. "Expensive therapy and a lot of mistakes." We pulled into our building's garage, headed up to our apartment. Home. A space we had created together, filled with art and books and memories, with no ghosts of failed expectations haunting the corners. Before bed, I checked my email one last time. There was a message from Maya Chen, the first scholarship recipient. She had graduated summa cum laude and was now working at a major tech company, but she was writing to tell me she was starting her own nonprofit to teach coding to underprivileged kids. She was paying it forward. I smiled as I read her excited message, her plans, her dreams. This was what it was all about. Not the dramatic confrontations or the public vindication, but these quiet moments of impact. Lives changed, potential unleashed, hope passed from one person to another like an Olympic torch. I wrote back, offering whatever support and advice she needed. Then I closed my laptop and went to find Liam. He was already in bed, reading. I climbed in next to him, nestled into his warmth. He put his book down and wrapped his arms around me. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" "For walking down that aisle with me, for standing between me and Preston, for believing in me every single day, for showing me what love actually looks like." He kissed my forehead. "Always. That is what love is. Not grand gestures or perfect moments, just showing up, consistently, even when it is hard. Especially when it is hard." I closed my eyes, feeling safe and seen, and wholly myself. Tomorrow I would wake up and continue the work. There were more women to support, more opportunities to create, more change to catalyze. The Foundry was expanding internationally. The scholarship fund was growing. My own next venture was in planning stages. But tonight, I just rested. Rested in the knowledge that I had done what I set out to do. I had taken the fracture and turned it into something beautiful. I had transformed rejection into purpose, pain into passion, abandonment into agency. I was not the girl who waited anymore. I was the woman who built, who chose, who created her own definition of family and success and worth. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.